Welcome to another episode of Hiring and Empowering Solutions. My name is Molly McGrath, and I am the creator of this office altering podcast. If you're a first-time listener, welcome. If you're a returning listener, welcome back. As always, you can check us out at hiringandempowering.com. All right, gang, you have been hearing me speak about EOS. You've been hearing me speak about traction. You've been hearing me and many of my attorney friends talking about rocket fuel. I am so excited. Maybe a month ago now, 6 law firms, myself and my business partner went down to Pennsylvania and had a pretty structured 3-day mastermind where we use the framework of Rocket Fuel by Gino Wickman as our body of work that we use to work on our business and really mastermind the framework, the operations of each of our business. And at the end of it, we're like, man alive, we wish we knew an EOS coach that one of the law firms said, I'm ready. I want to hire an EOS coach. We're growing, we're making money, we're having fun, but I want to make certain that this is intentional, scalable, able to leverage and optimize. So in a lawyer group, Lawyer on the Beach, which I'm going to give a big shout out to Miss Regina there. She did a phenomenal job in that private Facebook group. If you are not there, you must become a member of that group because it's just phenomenal in regards to operations, systems, process, software, CRMs, all the stuff that you need to know to run a successful law firm. I think now there's close to 2 million lawyers in that group actively practicing. And in there, one of Jordan Ostroff, who I have had as a guest, and I've also spoken with him many, many years in a row on Moshe's event, the law firm Growth Summit. Jordan said, I have an EOS coach for you. You have to meet Chad. So I'm so excited. Chad and I hopped on a phone call. I think we scheduled 15 minutes. We ended up going like 45 minutes and I was half hour late to my next appointment and I could have went 5 more hours. And I said, I have to bring you on, Chad, to my podcast and really speak. We just at the last minute hit this really fascinating conversation about the misconception of job titles and all the wonkiness that goes into office manager, COO, CEO, director of operations, all this fuzziness that we hear I do recruiting, as many of you know. So often people say to me, I need an office manager. And then when I get the job description, I'm like, whoa. This is not an office manager. This is either an implementer or an integrator. Let's go back and let's get really, really clear. Do you want someone ordering office supplies or do you want the glue of the business, the glue of the operations? So I'm excited to have Chad here. Chad is an EOS coach. He's going to give you a little bit of his background. And Chad Sinness, I am so honored to have you here. I'm going to have all of his links, his website, in addition to LinkedIn, by and large, is the best way to connect with Chad. Chad, thank you for being our guest today.
Thank you so much, Molly. And I'm so excited to be here also. So I am an EOS implementer. There's a lot of confusion
thank you.
with that.
I know. I always struggle with the word coach. Yes.
So you'd asked a little bit about my backstory and how I got to this point. So throughout my professional career, I worked for big companies and I've worked for small companies in various leadership roles. And I've always gravitated back to that small entrepreneurial company. I love there's different struggles. It's just a totally different environment compared to big corporate America. Went to grad school at the University of Central Florida, got my MBA. 7 years after grad school, I worked in a proven franchise system. 2 things that I really discovered here about myself. Number one, that I was passionate about helping others. And I was actually pretty good at helping others be successful in their business. And then number 2, the other discovery that I had, the impact of following a proven process, what it can do for consistency and scalability in the business. Left that company. I was actually recruited away to be the chief operating officer for a company here in Orlando. Stepped into that role. This was a 10-year-old company. We were profitable. We weren't going anywhere fast. And the analogy I used, we were a blob. We were a blob of people. We were a blob of process. We were a blob. We were just there, right? We weren't going anywhere. And somebody handed me a book, and the book was Traction. They said, read this. It'll change your life. I read the book and I loved it. And I said, this is the stuff that they need to teach in the MBA classes. They don't teach it. They teach theory. This is the tools. This is the way to harmonious bring it all together. I had my leadership team read it. They loved it. We decided to hire a professional EOS implementer, again, which is what I do now. The first year of running on EOS, we doubled profitability. We grew revenue by 27%. But I say more importantly, we got that blob of people, process that just existed. We got them all moving in the same direction. And that's really where the magic happened. We graduated from EOS. It was about a 2-year program. We graduated from it. And COVID hit. During COVID, we were shut down. The state required us to shut down for 4 weeks in our industry. We had zero revenue coming into our business. And our owners during that time made a decision to sell the company. I was laid off first and they sold it. From there, I looked, and it was actually my wife that pushed me into it. She said, what are you truly passionate about? And we started talking about EOS and Traction. And then she says, you always talk about this book. Why don't you take the next step? Why don't you become an implementer? So it was my wife that really pushed me into it. And ultimately ended up being the best decision of my life. So absolutely love what I do. I work with small companies now, small businesses, implementing simple tools to help them achieve 3 things that we call vision, traction, and healthy. Vision, getting everybody in the organization moving in that same direction. Traction is instilling discipline and accountability throughout that organization. And then the third is healthy. And that's creating a cohesive, open, and honest leadership team, because the simple truth is leaders don't always perform well in team environments. So as we work with the leadership team, we find as go they, so go the rest of the organization. You get to a point, everybody moving in that same direction, acting with discipline and accountability, functioning as a cohesive team. When it all comes together, it's an absolute magical experience. That's how I got to this point today.
Wow. What an amazing backstory. And I mean, simply as picking up the book, right? And then being able to implement. I love the term that you use, blob. And that really struck me on our last conversation. Can you say a little bit more about what that means for you? Because it sounds like pretty financially stable, making money in, street terms, fairly successful. But I would love for you to kind of, because you were, in roaming the halls, so to speak, what that looked like and felt like for you.
Yeah, we were successful. And again, they hired me for a reason to come in there and obviously to improve the business, improve the operations. But we weren't going anywhere fast. I'm going to say we hit a ceiling. We were stuck. Everything that we had done prior to then, it had gotten us to that point, but we knew that we needed to do something different to kind of break through that ceiling and ultimately get to that next level. And that for us was EOS. Obviously bringing a different implementer in. At that point, I was the integrator. I was working within the company. We brought an outside coach implementer in to help us implement it. That outside presence was absolutely huge for us. Like any great sports team, right? So if a sports team is that entrepreneurial company, a great coach can sit on the sidelines. They can see people playing this game of business that they don't see themselves. Points out certain issues, certain things that just we would never ever would have saw. And so, we were looking for something, and ultimately we ended up finding it with EOS.
So talk to us about, you and I, when we were on our last conversation, we talked about this fuzziness between, you even said, I was the integrator, not implementer, vice versa. There's all this cloudiness in regards to office manager, COO, and there's just some misconception in job titles. And I think it causes so much confusion, even with the candidate, with the new hires. So often I'll get phone calls to say, this wasn't in the job description, or this really wasn't, or now that I'm getting in here, I'm seeing X, Y, and Z, and seeing that there's a massive void, a massive hole, especially for small businesses. Before we started recording today, I told you We can't use the word COO or CEO or director of anything because small business owners shut down and say, I don't have the budget to support that, and or I don't have the need. And that's why I love this conversation of kind of shifting, pivoting your mindset around job titles and really anchoring into the key functions to create a successful business. Can you talk to us a little bit about that in your experience?
Yeah, absolutely. So within EOS, we eliminate job titles because we feel job titles bring egos, and we boil it down to function. And the tool that we use is something called the accountability chart. Looks like an organizational chart if you can create kind of in your mind what it's going to look like. But again, organizational charts have titles. We eliminate the titles and we start first with functions. So we start with the basic premise that every organization has at least 3 basic functions. There's a sales and marketing function, somebody that's out generating demand and somebody that's closing on that demand. There's at least one operations function, somebody that's producing a product or a service. And then the third basic function is the finance function. That's the money in, the money out, the financial controls of the organization. So there's at least 3 basic functions within every organization. Right above those 3 basic functions is a seat that we call the integrator. The integrator is the individual that integrates the major functions of the organization. They're the individual that's usually beating the drum. They're the glue that holds everything together. They're usually the individual that holds that number for the organization, the big number. They're really driving accountability throughout the organization. They're removing obstacles, working on any special projects, typically operate on logic. They don't mind having that tough conversation. They're involved in the day-to-day. That's a pure integrator. Above that sits another seat that we call the visionary. The visionary typically is sitting at 30,000 feet. They're the creative problem solvers for the company. We call them the 20 idea individuals. They're constantly, every meeting, they're bringing 20 ideas to every meeting. They might not all be great ideas, but they're constantly bringing ideas. A true visionary, when they get involved in the day-to-day, they come in, they cause chaos, and then they leave. That's a true visionary. And those 5 basic functions make up our accountability chart. So once we get the basic framework of those functions, we then become crystal clear on the 5 roles of each one of those functions. You mentioned rocket fuel earlier, and this is where rocket fuel really comes into play, because you look at that relationship between the visionary and the integrator, which that's the whole book. It's amazing. The book is just written on the relationship of those two, but it's such a powerful combination. If you can find the right mix of integrator, the right mix of visionary, watch out, because that's the rocket fuel, right? So we get the basic function. We've got the 5 roles for each one of those functions. We then come in and we start filling the seats. We start putting butts in seats. So some basic premise as we do this. Number 1, you can only have 1 name per seat, because if everybody's accountable, nobody's accountable. However, you can have that same individual in multiple seats, if that makes sense. So as an example, in my previous organization, I sat in 2 seats. I sat in the integrator seat. I also sat in the VP of sales seat. I sat in 2 different seats, and that was okay because there was still only 1 person per seat. 80% of the problems in most all organizations come from this. They're caused by people. That this tool, function, role, seats, through the accountability chart, clarifies so many issues within organizations.
You said something that I just resonate so much with. And I love, that is why I really loved Rocket Fuel, because with that relationship of the integrator and the visionary, and once you have that solidified, then you go in and start filling in the, seats on the bus. I think there's so much confusion. People way back when read the E-Myth, all about the org chart, org chart, org chart. Then, them reading Traction, reading 7 Habits, all these different books that are out there. There's so much noise, and people so often will hop onto coaching calls with me and hang their hats on titles. And they will anchor into the last book that they read. And I believe a confused mind says no. And that's what I love about what you just said, the relationship between the integrator and visionary. And if we could get people to almost go back to basics, so to speak, and think of those two roles. You said the visionary, that if they're involved in the day-to-day, that they will come in and they will create chaos, unintentional typically, but because I always call that the seagull effect. They swoop in, they crap everywhere, and then they fly away. And it causes so much. I see it every single day where entrepreneurs will tell me, visionaries will tell me, I want out of the day-to-day, but they'll go and hire an office manager who really wants to roam the halls and order staples, office supplies all day. They don't have the skill set of the integrator, or they'll go and hire outside business consultant who does not have their boots on the ground. They're trading dollars for hours, so to speak. And they're not truly serving in that fractional sense. And I'd love for you to talk about that a little bit. But I really would love for our listeners to take away from today about that relationship between, if you truly want the freedom that you tell us that you want all the time in regards to getting out of the business, the day-to-day business, and truly being able to be that visionary where you are responsible for the 20, 30 ideas that are, roaming around your head and waking you up at 2:00 in the morning, but you're afraid to say them out loud because you have no idea if anyone's paying attention, who's going to do anything with it. And you don't have people on your bus, so to speak, to deploy. You're about the big relationships. You're about doing the visionary things, the company culture, the things that you tell us that you want to. But really, really, at the end of the year, as we sit here, and I'm going to push this podcast to hit the shelves before the end of the year for this very reason, because it's so near and dear to my heart, and I'm very passionate about it. The integrator, who is your production cop, your accountability cop. I think, Chad, I heard you say either on our last conversation right before we recorded, the glue of it all. And when you said that, I was just thinking about it. Like, think about your family dynamics, right? There's always someone, especially with your family that you were born into, and then as family expands, et cetera, you're always, at the cocktail party at Thanksgiving or appetizer table or what have you. There's always someone in the family that you're like, they're the glue of it all. Or at a funeral, they were the glue of the family. What's going to happen? Like, think about that, how it's so necessary in a family unit. And I think in business, we really dismiss how crucial this position is. And, not what it's the fee or the price of the salary, but what it's costing you by not investing in this position. I'd love for you to just speak into that.
Yeah, I love it. Right. So a business can operate without a visionary. A business cannot operate without an integrator. But what happens is a lot of visionaries get stuck in that integrator role, but that's not really who they truly are at nature. And they kind of spin and spin and spin. The other fascinating thing with the visionary role is the visionary has all these great ideas, right? But they can't execute on them. And so that integrator is the executor. That's the one that installs that business plan, that actually enforces it and ensures that it comes true. I'm going to pull this into the legal side. And we talked about Fireproof. We haven't talked about it yet on the podcast. But Fireproof was a book written by Mike Morris up in Michigan. I do not know Mike. But in his book, he talks about hiring his integrator. And his integrator is John. And I don't know how to pronounce his last name, Nakazil.
Yes.
Yes. But he talks about the integrator. And in the book, he talks about John did not come from the legal background, but John was experienced in running businesses. And so he brought a non-lawyer into a law firm. And I mean, he even thought he was crazy. Mike said he was, but the magic, he found the rocket fuel, he found his integrator. Mike is the visionary, and they've absolutely taken off from that relationship. It's finding that fit, finding that right person that can absolutely drive your business and take all of these ideas and execute on them.
So that's really, really fascinating. A business can operate without a visionary, but not without an integrator. Can you say a little bit more about that?
That's correct. So 50% of the time, most of my clients, when I first start this journey, there's nobody sitting in the visionary role. But there's got to be somebody sitting in the integrator role. Just because both of the seats are super important, but you can't run a business without an integrator. You can't. You need somebody that is going to drive accountability, somebody that integrates the functions, somebody that brings everything together. You need that. So often what we see, we call it an I/V, where you've got an integrator and a visionary sitting in the same seat. They're kind of one. But what happens is we know they're a visionary. We know they want to be a visionary, but they're stuck in that integrator role. And so we talk about, okay, for you to grow, and if we define the roles of those seats, is this really your unique ability? Is this really what you do best? And often it's not. True visionaries just get bogged down in an integrator role. They can't execute. And you see that so often, and especially, I'm going to call it lawyers, right? There's a lawyer podcast in the law field. You see it so much on the law side. You also see it on the medical side, because they want to be in charge. And sometimes they got to get out of the way, bring somebody in that can absolutely run that business for them, operate in that visionary role, which is probably where they do best, which then even leads into chapter number 2 of traction. And I used to always say chapter number 1. I actually had to look this up. It's chapter number 2, which is called letting go of the vine. It's getting to that point where you go, all right, we've got the right people, we've got the right process, we've got the right structure underneath me, and we let go of the vine. The people that we've hired to do these jobs, we're going to hold them accountable. We've got the right tools and we've got everything in place, but we let go of the vine. And watch out, because that's where a lot of the magic happens, is because they relinquish some of the control, but the business just absolutely takes off from that point.
How do you let go of the vine? I mean, talk about attorneys, especially. It's so hard to let go of control. They have stories in their head about malpractice that was hammered into their heads during law school, or whatever other head trash they have around that. How do you have any drive-by coaching in regards to how to let go?
It's simple. It's EOS. Because again, a lot of it is getting everything, the right structure underneath that individual. And then defining it crystal clear on the roles, who's accountable for what. We put a scorecard in place, so we're measuring activities. We put the right process in place underneath them. And then we ensure that we've got the right people in the right seats. And part of it is it is kind of that trust but verify, right? We're constantly checking in. We're not just setting this and forgetting it. Basically, I mean, we're checking in every week on a lot of these. We're checking in weekly on our scorecard, on our main priorities. We're checking in on those activities just to ensure, right? This is, again, kind of that trust but verify. But as that continues to go on and you start to see positive momentum, you start relinquishing a little bit of control. The one thing I always ask for, talking about letting go of control, I always ask people, I mean, how many hours a week do you work? And some people want to work 60, 70 hours a week. Awesome. I always say, do you really? Or do you want to have outside relationships? Do you want to increase, the time that you spend with your family? Do you want to do those extracurricular activities? And if the answer is yes, and you're not doing it, implement an operating system by all means. one of my earliest clients was a doctor. He was a family medical doctor. And it wasn't about profit for him. It wasn't about generating more. He was booked out for months, but he just needed clarity in his business. He needed something. He was working 5, sometimes 6 days a week, doing paperwork at home. And he was frustrated. He was burned out. He needed something else. And he implemented EOS. Again, getting the right people underneath him in the right seats, getting the right scorecard so we're looking at the right data, getting the right processes in. And it just allowed him to step away from the business. He now works 4.5 days a week, but he's living a much better life. It's given him so much clarity, and it's given him clarity for the future. He now has a 10-year strategy plan. He knows where he's going to be in 10 years. It's pretty big, but it's awesome because we put that out there and then we build everything off of it. Everything from within the next 90 days all the way to 1 year to 3 year, everything trying to reach and trying to hit that 10-year goal. And it's individuals like that where we just go, man, that's what we do with EOS. That's it. It's not always about making more money. It's just getting clarity in your life and getting clarity in your business.
I love that story that you tell about the medical profession, about the doctor, because so often, I think a lot of times, entrepreneurs, business owners, visionaries, attorneys like to work. And so part of it is, I think, either subconscious or what have you. That story you told, you didn't say, well, he's living the 4-hour work week and only working 4 hours a week. That's not in alignment with his values and how he wants to spend his time. But he's working more so within his unique ability. And so often entrepreneurs, they put a price, they put an ROI on time and money, but energy, like you said, he was frustrated. And it's not like he got back all this time in the world, but it's, energy, where he's putting his energy. And at the end of the day, money is energy. And a lot of times, speak into that.
Yeah, no, I love it. Right. So, you look at, his journey, right. And he wouldn't mind sharing this, but he bought a medical practice 16 years ago. An existing practice came with 3 employees. And as he continued to grow, he built a new location, which expanded it, added. He's now up to 15, 16, 17 employees. But he was doing everything, right? Everything that comes with being a medical doctor, but also everything that comes with running a business, right? Now he's doing IT stuff around the office. He's doing all the financial stuff. Everything. And what was getting pinched out of that was what he was truly passionate about why he got into medicine. And that was helping people. So less and less, he was seeing less and less patients, but all the other stuff within the business kept piling on and piling on. And so we, again, delegated those tasks, got out, and we operate in what he does best, his unique ability, right? Which is helping and seeing patients, what he's truly passionate about, what he's the best at, and what he loves doing the most, seeing patients. And we focus on that, delegate everything else. He's living a much better life. He's happier. The business is flourishing, is doing better than it's ever done before. And everything's just moving in the right direction. It's not always simple. This didn't just happen overnight. I've been working with him for about 1.5 years doing this. But he's at that point where he doesn't know how he could have done it without EOS. It'd be curious to see where he was at, in a couple of years from now. But he's doing phenomenal.
So let's talk about the job titles. We were saying the misconception of them. So just scrap them, and moving to the 3 key functions of your business, of your law firm. And for our entrepreneurs that are listening to this, or team members that are saying, yes, I just need my attorney, my business owner to let go of the vine. I know if I can see it. So often team members can see it. They'll say, what's the biggest problem in the law firm? And they'll say it's the entrepreneur. He or she won't let go. and really invest in and or let one of us, whoever it might be within the firm, step up and truly serve in that position. So can you talk to us a little bit about the three key functions? I love it. You said, here's how you let go. First of all, you have the accountability chart that's going to sit there as your safety net. When you are measuring and you're tracking, so often people will say, I don't want to invest in X, whether it's marketing, people, process, coaches, consultants, what have you, because I did that before and it didn't work. And what I'm hearing from you is, yeah, but you didn't have the accountability chart.
Yeah, I mean, the accountability chart is one of the tools within all of this. The key with EOS is it's holistic. I mean, will the tool stand alone? Somewhat. but I mean, really, the beauty is when it all comes in together. So obviously, starting with the accountability chart is key, just because that is where most of the issues come in organizations, functions, and then defining those roles. And in small companies. So the common one, and maybe I'm getting a little off track of where you're going with that question, Molly, but one of the things is sales, right? We're a small company. Everybody's responsible for sales. I get that, right? But we need one person to hold it. One person ultimately that's going to be responsible to drive it. Now, everybody maybe holds a little bit of that sales piece in selling, but there's going to be one person that's going to be accountable to drive that number. But starting with the accountability chart is awesome. The accountability chart, I think just starting, first step, draw it out. And you've got to start with those at least 4 seats, right? The sales and marketing seat, at least one, at least one ops, at least one finance, and the integrator. So those are the 4 as an absolute basic. You got to have those 4. And then you ask yourself, do you have a visionary? Okay, if you have a visionary, add another seat above that integrator seat. Come up with the basic framework first. So the basic function, the basic framework, and then roles. Define the roles for each one of those functions or each one of those seats. And then from there, then we start putting butts in seats. And it just creates gaps. And you identify areas where maybe you're sitting in multiple seats. And for you to grow as an organization, you might not be best for that seat. We might have to hire that seat. So it does create hiring opportunities, growth opportunities, keeps you operating in what you're truly best at. Did that answer the question, Molly? Is that kind of where you were going with that?
Yeah, it sure did. Because even when you were talking about sales and marketing, somebody has to sit there. So often I'll hear from the visionary entrepreneur, let's get rid of the roles. The attorney is that they're responsible for sales because they're the ones that are in the conference room closing the deals by and large. I'm like, no, you can't hold yourself accountable. So who is responsible for that? And a lot of times it's a person in the intake process who's doing the follow-up and things of that nature. And once you empower them to do that, phenomenal. Finance. Okay, great. Talk about that. Operations. And then I love it. You say the integrator. Nowhere on there is it the visionary. Is it the vision, mission, all that jazz that people believe is at the starting point of all of it. And I just really want our listeners to hear so much about this role of the integrator. And can you talk a little bit, because there might be some confusion. I know sometimes I get a bit confused of a difference between the integrator and the implementer.
Yeah. So the integrator is inside that organization. They're employed by that company. Now, you touched on this earlier. There is kind of this new, or it's been around for a while, the fractional. So you can hire fractional people to do some of these seats, but still usually they're sitting in that seat. They're involved in the day-to-day. They're involved in integrators, involved in the day-to-day business. An implementer is what I do. So an implementer helps companies implement EOS. We do it in full-day sessions off-site. Typically, it's about a 2-year program on average. It's about 5 sessions annually. Now, every client is slightly different, but our proven process says you want to implement this within your business, hire a professional implementer, or You can self-implement. There's a self-implement route, or you could even read the book, right? I mean, there's several different ways to implement this. Obviously, hiring a coach will get you there faster, and it'll become stickier. And it really brings in the holistic nature, because I've found in a lot of kind of self-implementing companies, they'll grab a couple of the pieces and they'll go all of a sudden, hey, we're running on EOS. Yeah, I mean, if you want to call it EOS light, maybe, are you getting what you want out of your business? There's some questions we can ask to go, are you really getting it? And usually the answer is no. But there's several different ways to implement. So integrator inside the business, implementer is somebody outside of the business that is professionally trained in implementing EOS.
Perfect. So talk to us a little bit about what you are seeing when you are serving in that role as that out of the business and supporting, because so often this is what I'll hear, and this is what I love about what you do is, all right, great. I know I need to hire this integrator, but I don't know how the heck to train them. I don't know what to do with them. I don't know what their KPIs, their scorecards, or ROIs should be. Can you talk to us a little bit about how you see the relationship and kind of the dance between those two positions going?
Between the integrator and the implementer?
Yes.
So usually for me, usually the integrator is my primary point of contact that I deal with as outside of our sessions. Outside of that, there's not a really strong relationship. I am a leadership coach. I work with the leadership team. Rarely do I work individual unless it's an individual issue. But you'd mentioned something earlier there about the integrator, and expand just a little bit about the integrator. What were you looking for there specifically with the integrator?
Well, how I help them with what they're looking for in regards to job description, job title, things of that nature. Great. So you find the right fit for that position. They walk in the door and they're sitting there on day one, and how to even get them started in regards. So maybe some food for thought for the entrepreneur business owner to start considering it. You mentioned it before. Are you finding yourself frustrated? Are you seeing that you are not able to get to the higher peak performance, unique ability activities that you need to get to? If you've answered yes to all those questions, now you're going to put your money where your mouth is. You are willing to hire a true integrator, not an office manager, what have you. You believe in dismantling all these old school job descriptions. Now, kind of thinking of what they need to do for food for thought to ponder on as they are getting ready to hire this position of what's going to look like, what they're letting go of, and kind of how to do that.
Yeah. So obviously that integrator is going to hold a certain skill set, right? We're looking for individuals that have driven teams, that have led organizations or have led teams. There is a simple test on Rocket Fuel University. I think it's rocketfueluniversity.com, which, going back again to Rocket Fuel, which is the book based off of the integrator visionary relationship. But there's a simple test. And so basically the test will lead you down one of those paths. Are you more by nature an integrator, or are you more by nature a visionary? Now, obviously that test isn't for everybody, but if you're one of those two and kind of struggling, where do I kind of fit? And the truth is you maybe hold certain characteristics of both, but typically you're going to lean one way or the other. Me by nature, I'm an integrator. That's what I am. Now, I'm a professional EOS implementer, but I'm also an integrator by nature. Totally confusing all your listeners. But Rocket Fuel University, there is a simple test that you can go, and it'll even give you some ideas about, if you're looking for a true integrator, as you read the questions, you can kind of go, okay, this is a visionary question, or this is an integrator question. Mm-hmm. And it'll give you some kind of an idea and give you some kind of a scope about what a true integrator is throughout this simple test that's on Rocket Fuel University.
Great.
Let me add one other thing. So
Sure.
This is relatively new. So for the next step from that, I think they've had one, possibly two training classes. So as you get involved with EOS, as you get involved as an integrator, if you want to take it to the next step, there is a professional training course to become what EOS has recently branded a professional or a certified EOS integrator, where they bring in integrators from all over the country. They get together. There's obviously a training course, but then they just learn from each other. In addition to that, and that's also through Rockefeller University, there are a lot of other integrator forums that you can find, and I can connect people to various forums. I'm in Florida. The group of us in Florida, the implementers in Florida, we run an integrator forum quarterly, and it's just fun. It's bringing like-minded individuals together, as you know, Molly, as you do also with your groups, because there's just so much shared. Because the honest truth, as an integrator, if you're an integrator in a company, more than likely the next integrator in another company is dealing with those exact same or very similar issues. So we come together and we help solve each other's issues in these various forums.
Great. Well, I know you have a special guest or a special gift for our guest listeners today. Do you want to tell them a little about it? I will put in the show notes the assessment, the VI assessment in RockefellerUniversity.com as well. I'll put that out there in the show notes with all of your links for LinkedIn as well as your website, Chad. But can you tell our listeners a little bit about the special gift you have for them today?
Sure, absolutely. So a couple different things. Number one, if you self-implement, reach out to me, use me as a resource, right? I'm there. I answer questions, email me, LinkedIn, whatever. I do it, and I just love helping. I love people that are passionate about EOS, and if I can help in any way, I will absolutely do that. If you've considered or even just interested in taking the next step in EOS, we schedule what we call a 90-minute meeting. And again, it's free. And my one promise to everybody that goes through a 90-minute meeting, you will learn something. You will learn a tool that you can take into your business and use the very next day. But that 90-minute meeting covers everything. It's basically the movie version of the book, goes a little bit more in depth into some of the tools, kind of how we do it, and kind of why we do what we do. I do those, and I do those often. And then from there, if they decide obviously to hire me, then we take it and we go from there. But if you don't hire me, like I mentioned, you will gain something by going through the 90-minute.
Yes, you will. I know several of our clients that have already gone through it and have been absolutely transformed just by that 90-minute session. So thank you very much for your very, very generous time and gift today. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much for having me on, Molly. This has been great. I love it.
Yes. Okay. Well, that's a wrap for now, guys. I'm going to put all the goodies in the show notes, all the links to reach out to Chad at LinkedIn website, in addition to the link for the Rockefeller University. But again, our goal is for you to just drop all of those old school titles and really anchor into the key positions that you really need in your business, and shifting your mindset out of that and the misconceptions of titles and positions, and really anchoring into the functions. And I just love the EOS model and everything about it. So thank you for sharing with us today, Chad.
Yeah, thank you again, Molly.
If you like what you hear on our podcast, please feel free to visit our website at hiringandempoweringsolutions.com. So we love that you are listening to this podcast. Please drop us a line with any feedback, suggested topics you'd like to hear. And absolutely, we'd love to hear about your victories and your win in regards to creating entrepreneurs in an entrepreneur's world.